and good evening. Thanks for joining us for this, the second of a seven-part series titled Wasted: Small Efforts for Big Change. The program is planned around a series of conversations about waste, environmental justice, and the role that we all play in the future of sustainability. I'm Tony Marino, Executive Director of the Rockwell Foundation. Founded in 1935, our mission is to promote and support environmental education and conservation in the lower Connecticut River Valley. Please go to rockwellfoundation.org to find out more. Rockwell has been pleased to collaborate with the following co-sponsors: City of Middletown, the Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Governments, better known as RiverCOG, and Wesleyan University Sustainability Office. This program could not have happened without the assistance of many individuals, in particular Sherill Baldwin, Janice, Meyer, Jen Kleindienst, Kim O'Rourke, and the members of the Rockwell Program Committee. A special shout out to Liz Brittany, the Communications and Grants Coordinator at Rockwell, as she will be managing the mechanics of today's meeting. And to Michelle Eckman, Program Consultant to Rockwell, and thank you to all of you. We would like to acknowledge the heritage of the indigenous people of the state of Connecticut, in particular the Wangunk, Hammonasset, Nehantic, Uncas, and Mohegans of the Lower Connecticut River Valley. We understand that the issues we discuss throughout these series acknowledge the responsibility that we hold for social and environmental justice and for the protection of the natural resources entrusted to us on whose land we live, work, and play. The theme of tonight's discussion is what happens to your trash? To start, I'd like to welcome back Sherill Baldwin to this series. Sherill has worked in sustainable materials management for over 30 years and at DEEP since 2008. Current projects include Increased Recycling Working Group for the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management, Recycle CT Foundation, What's In, What's Out initiative, and the Connecticut RAP program. She facilitated the creation of the Universal List of Acceptable Recyclables for Connecticut in partnership with the Materials Recovery Facilities. She provides professional development for municipal recycling coordinators, is on the Connecticut Greenleaf Schools Advisory Council. Is also a founder of EcoWorks, a creative reading center for the arts in North Haven. I turn it over to Sherill.
Thanks, Tony. Liz, if you want to go ahead and start my slides, that would be great. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I have been asked to talk about where does our waste go, and I'm probably going to diverge a little bit. But just so you know, the cover picture there, if you've never heard of Portlandia, funny show from Oregon, and they had a little skit many years ago in their season 2 about which bin does it go in. And while it is a comedy and it is a farce, everything to what kind of containers, what color containers does our fingernails go in, it does bring out the issues of all the different types of solid waste streams. Next slide, please. So on the, last week I talked about historically, where does our materials go? Where is away? This is usually what happens. We live in our homes, we put our trash and recycling is on the curb, or maybe we bring them to the transfer station and they miraculously disappear. Historically, we used to put things in open dumps. We often referred to them as wastelands. Today we think of them as wetlands. Just to give you a sense of where our open dumps used to be. We understood that we were having problems with spontaneous combustion in these open dumps, and we also had a lot of vector issues, meaning vermin, animals. And so we started covering every day, and that's when we created sort of the landfills. It was a little bit more managed. We would cover the trash that was put in that spot every day to try to manage the vectors. But then we still noticed some problems in terms of our society, that there would be mixtures of materials combining, things would start to break down, and ooze and goo, often referred to as leachate, liquid would leach out of all the trash and then enter our waterways, our groundwater, or other areas in terms of water systems. And so sanitary landfills came about, creating impermeable surfaces on the bottom, using clay and then plastic and all these other layers to try to ensure that when trash was put in and then covered on a daily basis, it would be encapsulated. And that basically you're creating a tomb for our trash, trying to ensure that it breaks down as little as possible. There may still be some type of leachate that's captured in these more technologically sound facilities, and also it may give off gas in the form of methane, and that is often usually captured in some way. Similarly, we had open burning. Clearly not a good thing. We moved on to basically big furnaces where we throw our trash in. Also not a great thing. Now, of course, our waste-to-energy facilities are much more state-of-the-art. Not only do they have better air scrubbers to protect our air, but we also are capturing energy, trying to create an efficiency, if you will, because if we're going to burn trash, let's try to capture some energy that's created. So most of our materials may be going to sanitary landfills or waste to energy, but we, of course, are also trying to expand and increase the amount of materials that we recycle, compost, and/or digest anaerobically. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, excellent. So while I know the topic is where is it going, I think Janice is going to really talk about what happens to materials. So I thought it might be helpful to understand that as professionals, we think about it in terms of waste streams. And waste streams are specific flows of waste, and we think about it in terms of where it was generated and how it was generated to help us think about the solutions for recovery, recycling, and or disposal. So we talked a lot last time, if you were here last week, about municipal solid waste, or MSW. This is generically the trash that we generate in our homes or multifamily homes, apartments, dwellers, condos, and sometimes small commercial businesses. This is not what we would call waste from industrial sites or institutions like colleges and universities. Those are usually considered a separate category or a separate waste stream. Sometimes small businesses, though, could be part of the municipal solid waste stream, and we manage this in a specific way. You'll notice I have a little italic there on used electronics. And if you look at the different waste streams, and this by all means is not a comprehensive list, just a list to sort of give you an idea of how complex waste management can be. But if you look all the way to the bottom, you'll see solid waste that requires special handling. And that's because it might need to be treated in some way, maybe it's hazardous, perhaps it's regulated in some way, and in this case, use electronics are. Next slide, please. So bulky waste or oversized MSW is things like upholstery furniture. Maybe it's those big play skates that, you crunch part of it, or maybe your kids have grown up, you don't know what to do with it, you can't find somebody to take it. Well, where does it go? It ends up as bulky waste or oversized MSW, along with like window fans and rugs and tires. This material is generated from residents as well as commercial, especially if a commercial entity is doing clean out, maybe sadly evictions, and also post-disaster. So all of that oversized stuff, if you will, the bulky materials are all collected, and we think of that material as different. Again, you can see a little asterisk there under tires, and that's because tires need special handling because of the type of materials they are, mostly petroleum-based, and they need special handling when processed. Next slide, please. So construction and demolition is also its own waste stream. We combine it as both construction and demolition because it creates wood and shingles and gypsum wall boards. However, there's a difference, you can differentiate. Construction creates clean and demolition creates painted, or sometimes referred to it as dirty. So you might have gypsum wallboard scrap, which is a clean material coming from construction, and some people might call it dirty or painted gypsum wallboard because it already has paint on it, and it provides some challenges to be able to recover that material for recycling. And so this is C&D, all the different materials. This is from new construction of housing and commercial buildings. It also includes repair and renovation. when we are renovating or repairing something, the side of a house, or maybe even renovating a kitchen, it creates a lot of materials that ultimately could be reused or recovered for recycling, but may end up being disposed. It also includes roadways, bridges, and you'll see also an asterisk there. C&D has some challenges because we generate asbestos, lead, and PCBs at different times, depending on the building, the age, the structure, etc. Next slide, please. I thought I'd go a little bit deeper into C&D because it gives you an understanding of some of the challenges we face as a state agency as well as a municipality. On the left column, you'll see the type of waste, and then legal classification in Connecticut is the middle column, and then give examples at the end. So land clearing debris is trees and stumps, and then the next is demolition waste, and that includes concrete, wood, bricks, plaster, roofing materials, etc. But the legal classification for that is bulky waste. And yet, earlier slides, I told you that bulky waste is upholstered furniture and, the playscape. And that's because there's a general term or a generic term that we may have an understanding of in society. And then there's the legal classification or the legal term that's in our statute. Causes some confusion. This also causes confusion because Connecticut, of course, may be focusing on its waste specifically. So we are also part of New England, we're part of the Northeast, we're part of the Eastern Seaboard, and we're also part of the country. And so we do a lot of projects working with other regions, other states, and we work with each other to come up with solutions. We work with each other talking about our challenges. And some of the biggest issues is that we often define things differently, and that can cause a lot of confusion. Next slide, please. So in 2015, we did a waste characterization of our municipal solid waste. A lot of people refer to this data, they refer to the comprehensive materials management strategy as well that showcases that study. At the same time, we also did a waste characterization of construction and demolition. It was the first study that Connecticut did on C&D, and it gives us an appreciation of what is in this particular waste stream because it helps us identify how can we create solutions. What are the challenges, and then how can we create solutions? So you can see all the beautiful colors. Blue is wood, and wood clearly is a large component of the C&D waste, both from construction and probably demolition and repair jobs. We also have a lot of shingles, specifically that's probably asphalt shingles, asphalt roofing shingles. We also have gypsum wallboard, packaging waste, metal. ABC refers to asphalt, brick, and concrete. While the waste stream may generate a lot of ABC or asphalt, brick, and concrete, a lot of that material is usually going to a different site. We have a lot of aggregate facilities that break up concrete as well as brick if it is basically used and then used somehow in terms of like in different ways of using aggregate for road base, etc. And then ceramics. And ceramics are exactly what you think it is. It is toilets and sinks. And depending on the structure, it could also be very old plumbing. And then we see this other, the maroon, 30%. That's a huge chunk. Now, this study basically looks at all the incoming materials to facilities in Connecticut, which we generically call volume reduction facilities, or DRF. Now, you're familiar with materials recovery facilities. That's where our recyclables go, and a lot of people are aware that, the materials are sorted by hand or manually, and then they go through a system where magnets take stuff off, and other stuff is blown, and things are sorted by perhaps by optic sensors, etc. Well, in terms of C&D materials, we have, I think it's over 26 facilities that manage C&D waste, but only 5 do sort it. Only 5 sort to recover materials. I think we have more and more facilities that are trying to do some sorting, but when this study was done, only 5 were sorting out C and D. And if we're trying to increase the amount of C and D that we're recycling, we look at this graph, and we discover that 1/3 of the incoming materials to these C and D facilities is other. And what is other? Other is oversized MSW. So our C and D facilities are getting upholstery furniture, playscapes, and other things that are not necessarily part of the C and D waste stream. So again, remember I was talking about waste stream flows. And waste stream flows, when we have an understanding of a specific flow of waste and where it's generated and how, it helps us develop systems to recover that material. So this study is telling us that there is a third of the material that's coming in is different material than what we expected. And so it means that we need to manage and think about things in a different way. Next slide, please. So another, just gives you a sense of how much material is coming from what source, in the sense that we have a certain percentage from demolition, renovation projects, even less from construction, and that again, a large percentage is coming from the bulky waste universe, which is probably from clean-outs and other bulky waste collection events. Something else to be aware of, I think I forgot to mention that because we have so few facilities that are recovering C and D, at the time of this study, it was estimated that we only had a 7% recycling rate or recovery rate for C and D materials going through these facilities. So it gives us a sense that we have a great opportunity to improve. Next slide, please. So the next couple of waste streams I can tell you, are not my strength. Can you hear me now? Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, I'm just seeing your note. Hopefully everybody can hear me. So universal waste in Connecticut are basically Connecticut Universal Waste Rule requires certain materials to be managed in particular ways, and it is aligned with the federal Universal Waste Rule. And it basically sets up a streamlined regulation to reduce regulatory burden by allowing longer time for storage of waste. And basically, these materials are generated in a wide variety of settings other than industrial settings, and that they're generated by a vast community or a large number of sources. Batteries, of course, everybody tends to generate those. And then it may also be present in significant volumes in non-hazardous waste management systems. Great example would be pesticides. We also all generate pesticides. And again, this is not my area of expertise. That's all I can tell you on this. I think Janice has a greater understanding of some of these issues, and she'll probably be able to address some of the specific questions. Next slide, please. And again, hazardous waste. Again, it's just to help you identify that there are different streams, that they have different makeups. In this case, it's discarded chemicals and other waste. We also generate them in all the different sectors. And because they're hazardous, we need to manage them in a different way that is separate from the other ways that we are managing waste. Next slide. So we used to call this area leaf and yard waste. And that's because it was mainly leaf and yard waste. And of course, it also includes perhaps stumps and trees. And because this area or this category or waste stream is really expanding in terms of opportunities in the last decade or so, it's now referred to as organics. Organics is a waste stream. And it is not that the food scraps that are generated were grown organically. It's that all these things are basically carbon-based, and they have the opportunity or potential for breaking down in composting or anaerobic digestion facilities. They are also generated everywhere, even in industry, and that's because industry often has cafeterias as well as grounds, and so they too are generating a certain number of organics. Next slide, please. So this is another area that is not my specialty. It's more that I just want you to understand that there are different materials that require special handling, and that includes electronic waste, tires, even to the point of street sweeping and catch basins. It gives you a better understanding of how hard our DPWs work, and that our municipal folks are doing a lot of work on a lot of different areas. And this is just related to waste, because of course we know our DPWs also have to do a lot of other things in terms of roadways and, you know, getting snow off the ground and all those wonderful things that they do. Next slide. So how much waste are we generating? I know that this is a bit of an old slide, but our last waste characterization was done in 2015, and it tends to use the most current data at that time. And so the most current data at that time went through 2013. But what I want to point out to you is in 92, 96, and 2000, the amount of waste that we generated was somewhat level. A little bit of a spike in 2004, and then it kind of levels again in 2008, and then it starts going down in 2009, 2010, 2011, and even 2013, where it kind of levels off again. And I want you to think for a moment, why is that? Do you think it's because we are just doing better and that we're disposing of less waste? Sadly, that is not necessarily the case. There's a couple of things. First, look at the data. It says pounds per person per year. And so when we think about the amount of waste that we generate and weigh it, we have to think about what are we weighing and how perhaps has our trash changed. In the industry, we call this the evolving ton, in the sense that what we used to buy and consume and then perhaps throw away has changed over time. We read less newspapers. We read online. And industry, as a way of dealing with transportation costs, which ultimately also help with climate change issues, are doing something called lightweighting, where I meant to bring one up because I do have an example. If you have like an old Coke bottle from the 60s or 70s, and then compare it with a glass Coke bottle today, there's a huge difference. That old Coke bottle is heavy. Well, we have the technology to change and make that glass bottle lighter and still be able to structurally hold that Coca-Cola and be transported. Technology and the industries have also done this for both plastic and aluminum, but you might have a harder time recognizing it because they were so light to begin with, but they are using less materials, which of course conserves resources. And ultimately, if we're throwing some of these away, as well as all the other things that may be getting lightweighted, our trash is lighter. So this is my take on it. I would love to hear if anybody else has thoughts on it. Next slide. And from that same study, it gives us a sense of where our trash is going. You'll see most of it is going to waste-to-energy facilities. Then we also are recovering a lot through recycling, good for us. You see a small little sliver way up on top that says Connecticut landfills, and that's because we have a handful of municipalities that still have landfill capacity, but at this point they don't put any municipal solid waste in it. They're really only supposed to be putting in the oversized MSW or bulky waste. And again, most of that material is probably going out of state. So if we look at the sliver on the bottom that says disposed of out of state, looks like 283,000 tons of material. And that is probably mostly oversized MSW and maybe some C&D materials that are going out of state. Next slide. So compare it to a new slide with new data. This is from the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management. You are, if you join the Rockwell Foundation next week, you'll be lucky enough, or maybe it's in 2 weeks, lucky enough to hear the commissioner speak about this coalition along with some of her municipal partners. And this is showing the capacity of waste-to-energy facilities and how much waste was actually burned. But what I found interesting was what was exported. So remember back in 2013, we were exporting about 283,000 tons. And this slide shows that we are now exporting over 400,000 tons. Huge difference. Mostly because the Meyer facility in 2019 had some burners go down, or some of their lines go down, and that they were taking in a lot less waste and had to export it. This is going to be an issue going forward, of course, as we have heard that Meyer is likely to close next year or the year after. So it gives us a sense of what's going to happen. More will get exported if we can't do more waste reduction, reuse, and recycling. Next slide, please. And so what's still in the waste stream? Again, this is referring to the 2015 study looking at our waste composition. This is what's still in our waste stream. So we have a lot of paper, and a lot of food waste, a lot of plastic, and a lot of C&D. And so when we think about food waste, this is not just food scrap, right? This might be packaged food that just never made it to a home. Or it's packaged food that was in our refrigerator that we forgot about and then had to reluctantly throw away the whole thing. And so food waste represents a great opportunity, again, for waste reduction and even reuse and recovery, because we have a lot of food recovery programs, as well as composting and anaerobic digestion. Paper has a great opportunity to be recycled, and of course, all the other programs as well. Next slide, please. So, did you know that recycling is the law? I hope you did. Because it has been since 1989. And the way that the law reads is everyone must recycle. Our law does not state businesses must recycle. The law doesn't say homeowners must recycle. It doesn't say colleges should recycle. It says everyone must recycle. And so it's a really unique law in that basically everyone must do their part, even if they're outdoors in public spaces such as parks, ball fields, and street corners. Next slide. So what are we required to recycle? I've sort of broken it down into the categories that I think about, which is we do have a list of mandatory materials or things that are designated for recycling. Connecticut also has a lot of things that are banned from disposal. And then we have items that are covered under a product stewardship program or an EPR program. And then we have items recycled through the deposit program, that's the bottle bill. And then we also have a lot of municipalities that are leading the pack and creating and passing ordinances that are going far beyond what state laws do. Next slide. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly, believe it or not, because I know that we started a little bit late. Items designated for recycling, this is the list. Next slide. Of course, it's what you generate, not just what you that you have to recycle it. Basically, if you generate, you need to recycle it. And if you look at the list above the line, that's pretty much everything that goes in your recycling bin. That's the stuff that goes in the mixed recycling, or the single stream. And if you say, oh, I hardly have any of that, I put in all this other stuff, well, then you're probably wish cycling, and sadly, you should review what is acceptable in your recycling program. Next slide. So there are items banned from disposal. These are the ones that are currently in regulation or statute. Calls for grass clippings to be left on the lawn, but of course grass clippings can also be collected and composted in town. Used electronics should not be put in the trash, and motor vehicle batteries should not be put in the trash, and mercury-containing products such as thermostats should not be put in the trash. Next slide. And then, of course, we have the bottle bill, which is basically carbonated beverages. And then I believe it was in 2012, water bottles were added. Next slide. And then items covered under a product stewardship program or EPR, extended producer responsibility law, include use electronics or TVs, monitors, printers, and computers, where municipalities provide opportunities for residents to recycle these for free, and it also does not cost the municipality money. They may have collection programs at the transfer station, or maybe they're coordinating one-day events or events a couple times a year. Paint is also collected, usually at retailers like hardware stores or paint stores, but maybe a transfer station as well. And mattresses, again, transfer stations and maybe collection events. And mercury thermostats tend to be contractors, and unless you're a do-it-yourselfer, but they have a program where they can recover their thermostats without putting them in the trash at no cost. Next slide. And I just wanted to show you the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management did a survey before really diving into this topic as part of a working group. And I thought you'd be interested in seeing what they thought were priorities as we were going to pursue EPR laws in the future. And where they ended up, they decided propane tanks were a priority now, and it ended up being a #1 priority by the end of their working group, and tires the second, and household hazardous waste was third, packaging was third, and then household hazardous waste was fourth. And so it lets you know that what are the problem areas. I mean, clearly propane tanks, tires, and household hazardous waste were all part of that asterisk, and that's because they require special handling or they're somehow toxic in some way, and that really we need to look to EPR for those solutions. Next slide. And then, of course, local ordinances. We have a lot of municipalities across the state that are doing a lot of things. These are only the ones that I'm aware of in terms of plastic bags or expanded polystyrene, or a lot of programs around straws, even single-use water bottles. And then I've heard a number of people, and this is really out of COVID related, because we're doing so much takeout, a lot of restaurants are providing utensils, napkins, and condiments in those little single-use things when we don't need it because most of us are bringing it home anyway. And so some people are looking at maybe perhaps passing an ordinance that would not only save the restaurant money, but then we wouldn't have to deal with all these little pieces of stuff that we may or may not end up using. Next slide. And with that, I want to end with what is still in our waste stream. I know if you're doing the whole series, you're going to be doing a waste audit soon with Michelle, and it'll be really interesting to see what is in your waste stream, what's in your trash, or what are the materials you're recovering for recycling, and then how are you going to develop solutions. And with that, I will end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. That was awesome. Every time I hear you, I learn something new. And we got a few questions that came in over the chat, and I thought we would start with them and then we can open up to the floor. So if anybody has any questions, please go ahead to the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and you will see that there is a raise hand feature. So you can go ahead and do that. But one of our participants asked if there used to be an overlap in some of these waste categories. Is that in fact the case? Or if you could just explain that a little bit.
There are. So it's not like I created them. There are a lot of overlaps, and I think while again I'm not an expert in most of those waste streams. I don't work on universal waste, I don't work on hazardous waste, and I don't work on special waste. What it does tell you is that there's overlap, and so you sometimes need to learn about different waste streams and categories to help you figure out how to create solutions. And that often it has to do with the way that laws and statutes or regulations were written. And it makes it challenging for us to come up with solutions sometimes because of it. It is, of course, these materials are defined the way they are because we want to ensure protecting human health as well as the environmental health. So I don't have a great answer for you, but that's my answer.
No, it makes sense. That makes it clear. It's not in an effort to obfuscate the truth or something like that. It's just that it's complicated. That makes sense. Where does the ash go? Do you know where the ash goes? And
I don't work in that. Somebody said Putnam, and maybe that's true. Janice, I don't know if you're on mute. If you want to unmute, you probably know the answer to that. I'm sorry. Again, I'm covering the large spectrum of waste, but I really only work in recycling and composting. Janice, do you know where the ash landfill is in Connecticut?
I was thinking of Putnam also. That's what I'm thinking.
All right.
Putnam it is. All right. Thank you for that. A very astute question came in about the EPR. Is there legislation that is being proposed in this session, to your knowledge?
So I don't work on any legislative issues, and I'm not up to date on any of them. But I do know that there are a number of bills that have come up related to EPR. And maybe Janice, who is, I believe, is a member of the Connecticut Product Stewardship Council, can answer that. So Janice is just going to answer all my questions.
No, absolutely not. Nice working with you, Sherill. Bounce off each other. There's all sorts of EPR legislation coming up here. The little propane canisters is one of the big ones that they're looking at. I know that they were talking earlier about tires, getting out of the streams and all, getting a place to put tires. There was some proposals for household hazardous waste as extended producer responsibility waste. I don't know where that's gone. I don't even know if it's shown up yet, but there's a whole bunch of different things proposed, even some crazy ones, but who knows how they're all gonna come about.
That's right.
Thank you for that. I'm going to take a couple more questions, and then we can go to Janice, and then we'll definitely have time for more. And I'm really grateful for all these comments and questions coming in. This next question to me maybe to me sounds a little philosophical, but more psychological. But what are the reasons, as you see it, that we try to recycle the bottles rather than refill them?
Oh, I love that question. So it is probably philosophy, right? I mean, we started creating probably what we considered cheaper to create single-use items as opposed to refill, and continued on that direction. As a society, we tend to value the ease of just buying and using single-use items. So that's sort of philosophical. How can we go, I wouldn't say back, but how could we go forward and move towards refillables? That's a great question. And it might be aligned with issues with the bottle bill. I can't speak to legislation, but I know that there are lots of different programs out there that are looking at how the bottle bill can support refillable. I know personally, I love microbrews, and I love buying beer from microbrews that have refillables, and there are a few of them in Connecticut. However, they're required to participate in the bottle bill. So if you're looking at it from a systems perspective, where's the incentive? Is the incentive to bring it back for a nickel? Or is the incentive for me to drive it back to the brewery and get it refilled, or just give it back to them so they can refill it? And so there is a disincentive currently for refillables. It's my understanding as well, at least when I've spoken with, I would say my microbrew, they have shared that when they buy refillable bottles, they have to buy them actually from Germany. And that's because we don't make enough and manufacture enough bottles that are sturdy enough to be handled for refilling. And again, remember when I shared the lightweighting issue? And they're just not sturdy enough to be able to be washed and used over and over and over again. and other places out west, they are trying to bring back refillables. They're also working with a glass manufacturer to manufacture bottles that can be refilled. And so it's part of a larger system. So great question.
Yeah, great question and a great answer, Cheryl. Thank you. This bothers me to no end. And this question gets at enforcement. Still seeing plastic bags, polystyrene in recycle bins. I mean, just things that don't belong in those recycle bins. Do you know where we are with enforcement, if that's even a possibility?
So enforcement is at multiple levels, right? First, you must enforce your family. You must enforce yourself. You need to learn what goes in the bin and what doesn't go out, what doesn't go in the bin. And yes, even in my household, sometimes you need to tell the ones that you love, what's in and what's out. Well, you might share that with your neighbors and other people in town. At the next level, you actually have municipal recycling coordinators that are doing their best to try to get the word out through perhaps bill inserts when you get your excise tax bill or your water bill, or maybe through social media to try to help ensure that people are doing the right thing. There are some programs in some communities that will actually tag your recycling bin if you have bad things in it. Sometimes they won't pick it up. Sometimes they'll charge you a fine. Sometimes they'll give you 2 warnings and then give you a fine. And you have to actually go in and pick out all the contaminants because the sticker tells you what you contaminate, what you put in there that's wrong. And the next level, of course, is the department. But really, it's at the municipal level, and it's both municipalities as well as the collectors or haulers that recover that material. And so it is challenging for them to do it. So ultimately, it falls on us as well. Remember the law. Everyone must recycle. So it's really on all of us to try to improve and do better.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. We're going to get to your questions, but we really want to hear from Janice. So Janice, Tony, if you want to do a quick introduction.
And again, Cheryl, thank you so much. And we do have, as Michelle said, we have time for questions later. I'd like to welcome Janice Ehle as our next presenter this evening. Janice is the Community Resource Planner at RiverCOG. Janice works on community and regional programs, which include, but certainly aren't limited to, household hazardous waste, recycling, paper shredding, climate infrastructure planning, bikeway and pedestrian planning, and has worked with the Rockwell Foundation in a series of repair cafes, which repair items that we use every day and removes them from the waste stream. So I welcome Janice.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody? Thank you for having me. And I have a couple slides here, if they can be brought to the screen, please. All right. My job, I don't know that everybody knows what regional planning or council of governments are. There's 9 council of governments in Connecticut, and I am in the one that's primarily Middlesex County, Lyme and Old Lyme. We have 17 towns, and all of those towns work together on land use issues, transportation money that's federal, state programs. We can get grants through our council of governments. So it's a way that towns work together as they would in other states in counties, but Connecticut doesn't do that. The judicial branch is the only thing for counties, really. So this is to cover the working with other towns through council of governments. Next slide, please. One of the programs that we work with for our residents is the household hazardous waste. We have a permanent facility. We're one of 3 in the state that has a permanent facility, and we collect household hazardous waste from say April, May till October, only in the nicer weather. And we're starting our collections up shortly. If anybody is interested on where they can bring their household hazardous waste, I suggest you go call your town hall, find out what programs they have and where you can bring it, when, and all those kind of things. Types of things that you can bring to household hazardous waste, kind of have it broken down in different categories: things from your house, things from your workshop, your garden, and garages. Think of any kind of chemical that you use in your house that if you don't use it up, you want to get rid of, that you have a place to bring it. So fluorescent bulbs are a great one with a little tiny bit of mercury. There's all sorts of different kind of cleaners. Think of the things under your sink. Yeah, kind of cleaning products. Yard and garden, those are fertilizers, pesticides, any kind of rodent protection, all those kind of things are for yard and garden. And we do take paint at our household hazardous waste collections, both latex and oil. And this program has been going on for probably about 3 years now. Before the program, people would put kitty litter or sand or sawdust with their latex paint, make it a solid, they can put it in their trash. Now, you don't have to do that at all. Just bring in that can of latex paint, keep the lid on so it doesn't spill, make sure that we can read what's in there, so don't mix it with anything else. Just bring it to the collections, bring it to your transfer stations, and they'll take care of it from there. Other workshop kind of things are, think of when you work on a car or your lawnmower or any of those kind of things. What kind of chemicals are used, what kind of cleaners, and then in the garage, fuels, kerosene, gasoline, if they're mixed, if they have water in them, any of those kind of things, we will take them at household hazardous waste collections. For the information on what our region takes, we have a flyer on our website, which is RiverCOG.org. So you can go there and find out what kind of things are taken. If you have any kind of questions, call up your town, find out if you can take them or not. Even if you are sorting things in the garage and saying, what if they can take this? Bring it. If we can't take it at our household hazardous waste collection, we'll tell you a place where you can probably bring it. So all questions, and we'll take anything or tell you where we can take it. Next slide, please. This side has something to do with paper shredding. Is that correct? There it is. All right. Okay. Paper shredding events. We offer those for our region. I think most areas have them. I know that sometimes banks have paper shredding events that they offer to all the residents. Schools sometimes do it for fundraisers. The kind of papers that you bring to these events are personal papers, like your tax info, medical information, health information, things that you don't really want to get out in the public, things that have credit card numbers on them. Those are the kind of things that you want to bring to paper shredding event. We don't take things really like birthday cards or a magazine that might have your address on them. Save those kind of things, put them in the paper recycling. We don't need to take those at paper shredding events. Our events are limited to the number of containers that you can bring. Just now we can have enough come to the event to get rid of their waste. So we limit ours to 5, say, bank box sizes. Paper shredding, let me know. Next slide, please. All right, transfer station waste. I'm lucky that I get to deal with all the different transfer station managers. And you know, each one is different. Each town is different on what they take, how they
We do apologize. There is a technical difficulty. Janice is joining us from Colorado where she's visiting family. And I think we're having a connection issue. So maybe Michelle, you can move on to some questions for Sherill until we get another connection with Janice.
Great idea. Great idea. So just pardon me while I scroll just a moment. Hold on just a moment. So feel free, somebody, if you want to raise your hand while I scroll through the chat. If you have a question you want to ask live. All right, so Zach wanted to know, are the problems with recycling plastics other than the 3 listed on the waste stream slide? Are there problems with recycling plastics other than the 3 listed on your waste stream slide? Sherill, you want to tackle that? Sherill, could you hear me?
I can hear you now. I'm sorry. It must have been something
That's
on Zoom
okay.
because Janice and I were both on the phone and my phone got disconnected from the system.
Oh, yeah, Zoom is providing all sorts of joy tonight.
Yeah,
So,
lots of fun challenges.
well, I think we've got Janice back, but let's finish this question. Are the problems with recycling plastics other than the 3 listed on your waste stream slide? Are there problems with recycling other plastics? And Zach,
So that's a really big question, and it's not necessarily related to waste stream, right? We have plastics that are generated in multiple waste streams. So biomedical waste, great example, lots of plastics. Every time we get a COVID vaccine, we're generating plastic waste. I wouldn't say that that is a material that we would ever want to recycle. That material is definitely treated in a different way. We have bottles and cans, or bottles and jars, perhaps is what you're talking about in terms of, you know, problems. But bottles and jars represent such a small fraction about how much plastic is generated in the world. It's really a complicated question because plastic is on and in everything. And we have to figure out how can we start to consume things that don't have so much plastic. And it's even beyond plastic. Plastic may have its challenges, but consumption is really the issue. We need to figure out how can we just consume less or consume things that have a lower impact. You know, everybody's talking about reading this particular book from the Union of Concerned Scientists because it's sharing how can you have a less of an impact. Well, to have less of an impact is to not have recyclables that need to get rinsed, because maybe you have a water bottle that you're refilling at home. Just going to let that sink in for a minute. It is so hard to think about waste reduction. Waste reduction is a behavior change. Waste reduction is encouraging not only us to purchase rent, but we need to require the manufacturers of these products to make new products or make things differently. I don't want to pick on a particular product, but you know, I'll just use coffee pods as an example. How complicated was it to make coffee before? How complicated is it to make coffee now? And think about the waste that's generated, even to the point of coffee machines bring up a whole nother issue, which is the issue of obsolescence, where manufacturers basically often make products knowing you're only going to use it for 3 years, maybe 5 if you're lucky. And then what happens? Often to repair it costs more than the original cost.
And so then you just say, well, I'm just going to chuck it and buy a new one.
Right.
So that too is a plastic item if we want to bring it back to plastic, but I'll stop, Michelle, so that you can, is Janice
Jan, I
back?
think we have Janice back, but thank
Janice
you for
is
that.
back, so if we could just pick up with Janice where she left off. Perfect.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
And Liz, if you could put her slide back.
And Janice, I think you're on mute.
You're still muted, Janice.
I keep getting, how about that?
There we go. You're good.
Oh, yes, okay. All righty, so so electronics, you can bring your electronics to the transfer station. They, on the take2recycle.com website, they list different things that you can bring, but pretty much they take everything. If you have an old lamp, bring it. If you have a printer, if you have your phone, if you have your computer, bring it, all those kind of things. And they do take care of the information that you have on your computer so that it doesn't get into anybody else's hands. They're good about that kind of thing too. So lots of different kinds of electronic things go to your transfer station. Transfer stations now are also taking textiles. And that means you can bring that one holy sock to the transfer station now. It doesn't matter. You can bring that dish towel that's got a hole in it to your transfer station. They'll take it. They'll take any kind of fabric things and they'll make rags out of them. They'll make carpet pads out of them. There's things that you can make out of little bits of fabric. So if you have textiles that you want to get rid of, an old sheet, your curtains, whatever, bring them to a textile recycling bin. They could be, say, at the local grocery store. There's different ones all over different towns. Goodwill will take things. So there's a lot of opportunities to get rid of textiles. Bay State Textiles will also do curbside containers if you would like. So call your town on that issue. If you want to have textiles collected at your curb with your trash, Bay State Textiles will do that. Mattress recycling that's a new one that's happened in the last couple of years through buybuymattress.com. Bring your mattress to the transfer station. They will take it at no charge. And it has to be dry and clean-ish. There's some restrictions on what kind of mattress they take, but there's a container at your transfer station for mattresses. We've already talked about paint, waste oil, antifreeze. Some of the transfer stations can take those fuels, and some transfer stations also have swap sheds, which I love. You can just bring your old popcorn maker that you're not using anymore, put it in the swap shed. Maybe somebody can use it. There's things you can take, there's things you can leave. So swap sheds are a great thing that some transfer stations have. And even when we were talking earlier about thinking of what you're buying, even for your clothes, go back to textiles, even for your clothes, when you go shopping for, say, a shirt, if you buy something that's only going to last, say, 1 year, think about it before you buy it. Say, maybe I want to buy a shirt that's going to cost a little bit more, that's going to last longer. The fabric's going to hold up. It's not going to stretch out. So think about when you're going to buy these different things, how they could last longer and be better for the environment, have less trash that you have to get rid of. Food waste. Sherill talked about food waste already. It's a big portion of our trash that we have. Transfer stations, I think, might just be starting, maybe pretty soon. I don't know if any of them have really, but you can compost at home. We have compost bins that you can get. In fact, in our region, we're having a compost bin and rain barrel sale. If you go to rivercog.org, there's information there about the compost bin and rain barrel. It's so easy just to put your compost in this closed bin. It's usually all your vegetable, your fruits, no meats, no cheeses, no dairy kind of things. But it's a great way to lighten up what you have in your trash. Yard waste, your leaves, your sticks. If you don't have an area in your backyard so that you can use them, that you can even compost with your leaves, you can bring them to your transfer station usually. Again, transfer stations are all different, so you need to call your transfer station to find out what they take. And some of the transfer stations, you might have to pay for things like your old sofa, a big sofa. You might have to pay for that. You might have to pay for some larger things, some larger trees or brush, but they do take them, and also tires. Next slide, please. There's also some more opportunities that you can get rid of things. As Tony said, we've done some repair cafes, which are great fun. We have some different people who know how to repair things come, and they bring their tools, and then residents can just come and bring their broken lamp that gets fixed. Maybe it has a wire issue. If there's a motor that on your, say your blender wasn't working, maybe they can help you get that going. There's experts usually at the repair cafes that can do all those kind of things. I did some kind of sewing things. Let's think of what else was there. Goodness, I'm kind of, pretty much any kind of broken thing, you can bring them to your repair cafes, and there's somebody there that can help you fix them. So those are a great place where you don't have to throw things out. Plastic film recycling is another whole issue with plastic. There are programs, and there's participating grocery stores. I don't know how many are doing them yet. There were some issues with getting the stores up and going after COVID started. Plasticfilmrecycling.org is a good place to go and find out, or you can call your local grocery store. Are you taking plastic film? I know that with all the Amazon orders, there's often plastic and that kind of thing in with the orders. So people are generating more and more. So hopefully the plastic film program will be up and coming soon if it's not already. Sherill talked about recycling bottles and cans, redemption centers by your grocery store. There's some general ones that are in different places. Go online and find out where those are. Next item is composting in your backyard. We talked about that already. And down below there is the website for our compost bin and rain barrel sale. Vermicomposting is a pretty fun way to get rid of waste. It's with worms. I have a bin in my dining room, believe it or not. People have bins in their basements with worms, and you can feed them food scraps, mostly fruits and vegetables, that they just devour them, and you've got this wonderful compost for your garden that you can use. And people are actually, some farmers are making it and selling it. So it's a whole market that you can have there. It's fun to do with kids. Always kids love worms. And what's the next slide? Another waste options is Sustainable CT. That's a program that the state has now, and it's a way of organizing municipalities to come up with different programs to get their municipality and get their residents organized into how to offer more opportunities. They have different levels of certification. You can get a bronze or silver. And you go through different actions. There's 13 actions where you can go through to get points, and your municipality can win an award, can win a certificate with earning 200 points here or 400 for silver. It's fun ways to do. There's all sorts of projects. You can look up what other towns are doing. It's just a great way to get the community organized in more ways to get rid of waste. You can organize ordinances. There's all sorts of things you can do. So that's one last opportunity you can do. Next slide. I think it's just me. That's who I am. If you have any questions that you want to ask later, this is how I can be reached. And are there any other questions out there from the chat?
There are a few other questions from the chat.
Michelle, before you start with more questions, I'd just like to interrupt and just talk about our next series and let people know that we're going to be posting a link on chat for people to register for the next series. The next series is on April 8th. Again, we're skipping a week, and it's titled Where We're Headed. And the guest presenters, as Sherill mentioned, will be Deep Commissioner Katie Dykes, Mayor Ben Florsheim from the city of Middletown, and Lisa Noriega from Sustainable CT. So again, we're putting the link to sign up for our future events, and I ask you to go there and sign up. Okay, Michelle, on to you with questions.
Okay, great. We have a question about Middletown, and I know we've got a few people on this Zoom that might be able to answer this question. But is Middletown doing more than just plastics numbers 1 and 2?
That's a good question. I am not exactly sure.
I would love to try to answer that if you don't want it, Janice.
Go for it, Sherill.
So every state follows the same every municipality in the state follows the same recycling rules. And we do not, even though number 1 and number 2 plastic containers, emphasis on containers, are mandatory, our MRF operators have agreed to take more than just those containers because there are markets for them. So other containers that they would be willing to accept that are plastic would include jugs, tubs, berry containers, and what else? Tubs, jugs, berry containers, and deli containers. We don't look at things as number 1 and number 2. Those numbers are resin codes, and those resin codes are associated with the industry to help them understand what plastic resin that container is made out of. It is not a guideline to help you understand if it's acceptable or not. So if you think about what is acceptable in the recycling program, what is acceptable are plastic bottles, jugs, tubs, deli containers, berry containers. And anything that, whether it has arrows or, singing, singers or hula dancers, it doesn't matter. It is not acceptable in the program. And just as an interesting factoid, because we often look to other states, I learned recently that California is looking to have those circles and arrows with numbers removed from the containers because they cause so much confusion for our consumers. And I found that really interesting.
And we don't.
Sherill, is there a place where people?
We don't.
Go ahead, Janice.
We don't.
Is there a place people can go to find out what kind of things, if they have questions about products? Is there a place they can go to find out?
Yeah, there's a web page called Recycle CT, and Recycle CT actually has a search tool. It's referred to as the Recycle CT Wizard, and you could put questions there about particular products if you're wondering if it's in or out. Thanks, Janice.
It couldn't be easier to use. I have used it a lot. You also have like this really, which is stuck with me. It's almost like a mnemonic in terms of like the film plastic, about the sound. If you can determine whether it can be put into a plastic film bag place, right? Like at the grocery store or whatever, or not based on the sound that it makes. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, I think the noisy ones are no. The ones that you can stretch and kind of, when you push your thumb into it and they stretch, those are the ones that are recycled. But those noisy plastic ones, oh gosh, sometimes bread comes in some noisy ones. Depends on what kind of bread you get. Yeah, but the noisy plastics, no.
It's the same with cracker liners. Most cracker liners are crinkly and they're out, but occasionally you'll find a liner inside that bag that stretches and then it's in. I always say, when in doubt, just put it in the trash. Don't contaminate the recycling.
Good advice.
When in doubt, leave it out.
When in doubt,
Complicated world.
When in doubt, leave it out.
So Jimmy has a question for you, Janice. Do you think with the incinerator shutting down, these events and the specialty recycling centers will become more prevalent?
Like hazardous waste kind of things, those kind of opportunities? Is that what we're thinking about? Or
Oh, Jimmy, do you want to jump in?
I think I just meant, sorry, I'm serving dinner to my folks.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I think I just meant like in general, like, are we going, I asked that before the transfer station slide. So I think I just meant in general, is there going to be initiatives to have more of that stuff? And I know you said transfer stations, you know, they're washed sometimes, some have them, some don't. They're not uniform. Do you think we'll see more uniformity? Do you think we'll see more, maybe more of those events that you were talking about, or anything just to, I don't know if the incinerator is on the mind of your organization or that selective recycling stuff, but that's pretty much what I had.
okay. As far as the incinerators and Mira, where a lot of our municipalities bring their trash and recycling, closing possibly, it is a huge issue on what's going to be happening with our trash. There's all sorts of legislation proposed with this whole issue. Towns are becoming creative. We'll see what kind of legislation actually gets brought forth, and I don't know. We'll have to see how it all works out. There are programs that are being looked at. The CCSMM state program that DEEP did brought up all sorts of issues. And I think through that, the conclusion with their final report, there's some creative ways to get rid of more things. So we'll have to keep watching and see what happens.
Yeah, I would agree with what, yeah.
Yeah, come back in 2 weeks, because the Commissioner Dykes will be here to talk about the CCSMM. She's also going to have a very robust question and answer session. And you can get these thoughts to you. Surely they're already in their mind, but they want to hear from us. You know, us as the people that live here in the state of Connecticut. So we hope that you'll come. Sustainable CT will be there as well.
Cool.
Cheryl, I'm sorry, you were going to say?
No, I was going to agree with what Janice said. And then, of course, the commissioner is going to talk much more broadly. But I think what we did learn is some municipalities are already pushing the envelope and pushing forward. And there's opportunities for other municipalities to learn from them. So I don't know if there'll ever be uniformity, because you also have to understand a lot of people don't even have a transfer station. Some municipalities don't even have that. And what they do is they have materials picked up by a hauler that they pay the surface for, and the municipality is not involved at all. So with that, it creates more opportunities as well as challenges. But you have more and more municipalities that are really doing some innovative work. And Middletown is clearly one of them. And I know Janice is doing some great work too.
Yes, yes.
Got to catch her in her repair cafe. Woohoo!
April 29th. Yeah, and Mayor Ben Florsheim will be here in 2 weeks as well to talk about what Middletown has going on, which is significant.
And that link is now in our chat, so please register.
We've got 2 more questions. The last 2 questions, one has to do with the proper disposal of dog waste.
Garbage. Put it in your garbage. Do not put it in your compost. Parasites and all those kind of things. That goes in your garbage, as well as cat litter and, you know, dogs and cat waste on garbage. Unfortunately.
And Izzy would like to know, is recycled plastic for road surfaces a fantasy? Or if it's real, if it happens anywhere, why aren't we doing it?
I've never heard of plastic being used in that way. Have you, Janice?
I've heard of glass. Glass
Yeah,
being
glass.
used in road surface. And it's all, even in road surface, it kind of depends on what Department of Transportation has in their specifications for roads. That's a whole loop that they have to jump through to get things in specifications before they can even think about if they want to use it or not. You have to have.
No, we do have a specification where glass aggregate can be used in a lower level aggregate level. And
Yep.
then we also have a specification for asphalt roofing shingles to be in a, not an aggregate level, but sort of close to that. There are so many different specifications needed. Talking to engineers about roadways, because their first thing will be like, what kind of a road? And you're like, what? There's different kinds of roads. And each layer is different depending on the weight and how long it's expected, how wide it is. They have so many different specifications to meet. So plastic, again, I've never heard of plastic being used in a roadway. Perhaps you're thinking about it because most of them are petroleum based, but yeah,
Whoever is asking this, let's find out more. Maybe we can do it in Connecticut.
yeah.
Get
Maybe it
on
was a
it.
Portlandia issue. Maybe it was a joke. Yeah.
Oh,
If you've
gosh.
never seen the Portlandia video, I encourage you to watch it. It's very funny.
It's so funny. It's so good. Put a bird on it. Anybody have any last questions before we wrap?
Well, I just
I
want
have a question for Janice.
I just want to say that I have to agree that worms do rock. Right? There's 2 comments on the chat about worms, and Cheryl, you were one of them, about the positive aspects of worms. Compost. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No,
Are
that's
you
okay.
asking-
I have a worm composting system too. Janice, I want to know when you do repairs, and this is actually coming from a question that somebody asked, what do you do if you can't find a part? Are there ways in which you can repair something even if the manufacturer doesn't offer a part anymore for it?
You know, it depends on what the broken part is, obviously. But I think more manufacturers are trying to make whatever so that you can repair them, so that you can get parts. I think we kind of went into the disposal deal for a while where you just buy it and throw it out. But I think things are turning around a little bit, and now we should have available parts to broken products that we can repair. Or do I have my fingers crossed? I'm not sure.
I know I'm familiar with ifixit.com, and they give you instructions on how to repair stuff. And I know they grade things on obsolescence, but I think they're only grading cell phones. But they can tell you whether or not it's repairable or how easy it is. Like, you know, if you took the old Apple and you tried to do the battery, you had to like use these special tools and it was glued inside.
Gosh, yeah.
Great examples of like trying to challenge us in some basic repair work.
Yeah. Tough stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, folks, I mean, The
Should we go for another hour?
information is mind blowing. You all know so much, and it's
I
very
had like
important.
12 questions for Janice. How do we have time?
We have 4 minutes. Go for it.
Let's go
Thank you.
for it.
Yeah, we could talk for hours. Well, then I will ask one. How about that? I'll ask one. So tell me about boat wrap, Janice. What's this thing about boat wrap you keep talking about?
Boat wrap. We might be the lucky region in the state to do a pilot project starting boat wrap. You know, these people put on their boats, for the winter time to keep them dry. All that plastic, where does it go now? In the garbage. We've got to get a program organized to get rid of that plastic properly. And they have facilities, there's programs where you can use that again and make more wrap or make other products with it. So this summer we are working on a pilot. We're going to be sending out a survey to boat owners and marinas on how they would suggest that we get rid of it or how it works in with their system. We might even be looking at agriculture film. And that would be like greenhouses, the black plastic on the ground that the farmers use, all those kind of things. There might be programs on how we can get rid of that. So stay tuned.
Terrific. Well, as Michelle indicated, we're near the end of our program. I just want to thank Janice, who just disappeared, and Sherill so much for joining us this evening. It was very informative. I love the questions. And again, our next one is 2 weeks from tonight. Commissioner Dykes will be here, as well as the mayor of Middletown and Sustainable CT. So please register and join us. Oh, Janice is back. Janice, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you all so much. This is fantastic.
Yeah. So
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great night.